any day that we have Elijah in the studio is a great day. And I'll dive into a little bit more about you here in a minute. But today's podcast, we're going to be talking about really kind of a story and what's happened since then of the last time that you visited and in being a parent and traveling and also like helping navigate what our kids are experiencing with anxiety and school pressure and traumatic events. And you have learned, you've had this like light bulb moment about how to use these tools to regulate yourself to connect with your kids in those intense and heated moments. And so that is where we are going today. Thank you for being here.
It's so fun to be here.
Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in your relationship and in yourself. I'm your host, Tera, and joining me today is Connection Codes certified coach, wellness coach and mentor, and like one of our favorite people, Elijah Runyan.
Hey.
And welcome to the Connection Codes podcast.
Yay,
yes. Yeah. So I want to start a little bit before we dive into the actual topic.
Okay.
Say you are here because we are prepping for our next round of certifications.
Yeah. So excited.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
We have over 40 Connection Codes certified coaches.
So cool.
Already. Our next cohort is over 50% sold out.
Yep.
Before we were even really marketing it, like before we even had a push for it. It's very cool. What is your favorite thing about the certification?
Easily the connections that are made. In the first one, it was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm connected with these people all over the world. And my fear was in the second one, it wasn't a fear maybe, I just didn't even think it would happen again. I was like, okay, that was a one-time experience, but immediately. It's just a testament to the tools and how deep you can go with someone so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, and these are people from all over the world, different cultures. I mean, literally all over the world. And you just go so deep so fast.
Yeah.
And it gives you a small picture of what life could be like if you had a community of connection coders, like in your normal life, which that would be my goal. So that's easily my favorite part.
Yeah. I love that.
Going deep with people. It's so cool.
Love that.
Yeah.
By the time this comes out, our cohort may have either about to be starting or just starting. So if you are interested in learning more, either getting on the wait list for the next cohort, because again, we're selling them out before they even start, then definitely send us a message and I'll have a link in the show notes where you can click to get on that list for more information.
Do it. It is worth it.
Yes, it is. So I couldn't agree more.
Oh, very worth it.
Well, today you're here because we're going to be talking about being a dad and parenthood and the roller coaster that parenthood is that I know very well.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about your family dynamic and about some scenarios that you found yourself in as like your kids are aging. You have teenagers now.
Yes, I do.
And so you have a different set of problems than you had 6 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what's happening there?
Yeah, so we have 4 kids, 2 beautiful daughters that are 17 and 16. Wow. So drivers, which is a whole ball of emotion. And then we have 2 boys that are almost 12 and almost 11. Wow. So we have these 2 sets. And I think Connection Codes came into our life at a perfect time 4 years ago or so. Yeah, it's just been quite the journey to really realize that so much of my parenting happened through my own emotions. That so many times I would try to control a situation or control my kids because I was experiencing fear or shame or, some lonely. And so that's been really huge just to be able to slow down for myself and ask myself what's happening. A really good example is we have a 17-year-old, but when she was 16 and she just first started driving, she would ask us to go places. And my first response was almost always no. And then I slowed myself down and realized I don't really actually have a reason to say no. I'm saying no for one of few reasons. Usually it was sad because she wouldn't be home. because I have so much joy when she's there and I miss her when she's gone. But a lot of times it would be fear. Like one time she asked me, "Hey, Dad, can I go to the beach? We live about 30 minutes from the beach. Can I go to the beach and watch sunset with my friends?" And I was like, fear, so much fear. And she's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Well, I just have some fear because it's kind of a small road and it's going to get dark." And she's like, "Okay, well, can I go?" And I was like, "Yes, but can you help me with my fear? Help me know that you're going to be safe." She doesn't use the tools. She didn't ask me what I needed, but that's what I needed, for her to help me with my fear. And so it's really cool to be able to tune into myself and then respond instead of react out of that. So
I think that that's the key. That last sentence that you just said, to respond instead of react.
Yep.
And I think that that is the cycle that I find myself in. I think Wes struggles with at times, so many parents, that we are simply just reacting.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a constant state of reaction, especially when you have multiple kids, because every 30 minutes there's a new issue.
Yep.
You know, and so it's like there's not a time where we're just chilling out, and it's a different kid every time. So I'm exhausted from whatever happened 30 minutes ago with the last kid. And now this next kid comes to me with something. And if I haven't tuned into my emotions, I'm still flooded from earlier, and I'm simply living in a state of reaction.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
And so what has helped you then in those moments to slow down? What was that light bulb moment like where you realized, oh, I am just reacting to my kids instead of responding to my kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if there was like a one light bulb moment. I want to be a dad that empowers my kids. And I realized that I was living from a place of compliance, like putting compliance of my kids, like them being compliant to my will over connection with them. And I think that was huge. I realized that because I was reacting, I was creating a relational disconnect rather than empowering them to tune into themselves, to make good decisions, and to be just like a safety net for them if they fail. Because that's what I want. I want to train them up to be good humans, not just good kids, right? I want them to be good adults. And so I think that was like the big kind of turning point. I realized like I am trying to control people because I'm flooded. And that not being a core value of my heart. And so as I began to go on this journey of just health personally, I realized, oh, this is playing out in all my relationships, but especially in my kids. And so that was kind of the big shift. Like, okay, I need to tune in because I'm trying to control them. Like, because I have fear or whatever you know, it is. So that was kind of a big.
We recently had Sharon McMahon on the podcast, and she said that fear is one of the greatest motivators in our society. And I know for certain that I am often a no person when I am operating from fear, when I am not tuning in and recognizing what's actually happening for me. I say no to Wes. I say no to the kids. And I don't want to be a no person at all. But if I just respond instead of like actually taking that moment and figuring out what's happening for me, then it creates disconnects.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't empower anyone around me to live a fulfilled life, because Wes called me the dream killer for a long time. He did. Yeah. Which in my defense, some of his dreams, and he knows this, like we would be bankrupt. He has a new idea every morning. He's the most fun human to live with.
About Wes.
It is like we have a blast. But I recognize that what he actually needed, instead of me saying no immediately, I just needed to ooh him.
Wow.
I hear an idea from him. I'm like, ooh, okay, yeah. And then he sits on it, and then the idea is gone. You know, he's like, "Yeah, that's a terrible idea."
Any money?
Yeah, totally. Like he invented the buffet one time. We were like at a restaurant, and he's like, "What if you could try every single thing on the menu?" And we're like, "That's called a buffet." Good idea, bud.
But they have those.
But he just has to get them out of his body. And so, I don't want to live as a no person, and I want my kids, because one day they are going to leave my home. And there's not going to be somebody saying no to them. So they need to be able to decipher in those moments, ooh, what is the best choice for me? And so how can I not live in my fear, but now just ask them like, ooh, okay, what's happening for you around going to the beach? Like, what's your plan for that? Okay, what's the safest option for you? What's happening for you there? Give them the tools to relay it back to us.
Absolutely.
And then move forward. That's equipping them.
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of me regulating their safety and taking away their ability to figure that out,
Yep.
they need to do it.
Yeah.
They need to figure that. Not that I let them do anything and everything they want to do, because
Totally. There's
it's
boundaries.
age appropriate,
Yep.
right? It's like there's boundaries, but still helping them tune into themselves by tuning into myself has really been key. Yeah.
And I was with you last time you were visiting when you had a situation with one of your boys to come up.
Yeah.
And if you're a parent that has boys and girls, we know that it is two different ball games often.
Yeah.
And in the way that they even respond or react to us.
Yep.
So I am curious about what that has looked like, because they're also in two different areas of life. You have your 16 and 17-year-olds with their issues, and now you have a 12 and 11-year-old.
Yeah.
And their problems look very different from each other.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, it's been very different. We have 4 kids, so we have 4 very unique personalities, which is wild. Still, it's wild.
I want to comment on that just to say, so many people think, oh, your kid is that way because of you. No. When you have 4 kids, you realize those babies come out of your body with their own set of ideas and who they are.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
You don't realize how you can create 4 completely opposite people.
Totally different.
Yes.
Absolutely different in every way.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are not like me at all. Some of them are, but it's a really cool microcosm of the world they're going to have to go into and navigate, because they're having to navigate different personalities as well.
Yeah.
But our youngest, he's just such a joy. He is just such a sweet little boy. He's so sweet. But historically, because he's kind of small, he is the littler of all of them. When he would get flooded or dysregulated, it would manifest as anger. He'd get big. He'd get fighty. Really. I mean, that's since he was little. That's been in, since he was a little baby. That's how any sort of emotion manifested for him. But he's a very sweet boy, which is such an interesting. When he's not flooded, he's like sweetest. And so last year, he's in 4th grade, and he's always been a very compliant kid. Like, especially when going to school, he's just like, no big deal. Goes and he sits in class and it's fine. But towards the last 3 months of the year, we noticed a shift in him, and he started to not want to go. And he started to get really flooded on the way to school. And I'm like, what's going on? This is weird, And he's complaining about school, and school year ends, and it was obvious that there was a lot of trauma that was happening. We didn't really understand how much. And then we were watching the Olympics, and there's this commercial that came on, and it was a commercial about school. And it was saying, school is a safe place. School is a place that you're supposed to go. And my son said, no, it's not.
Wow.
And in that moment, I realized I had been sending my son to an unsafe environment all year.
Wow.
And so we realized, man, this kid, the teacher was just mean, very punishment oriented, shaming the kids if they asked a question in class, if they didn't have their homework done perfectly, just so much trauma. We switched him out of that school. But then this year, he goes to school, and we had just so many instances where he'd get flooded, he'd get angry.
Yeah.
And it was all around school.
Wow.
It was all around going to school, having to do homework. And I was here and I got a call from my wife, I don't know what to do. He's lost his mind. And again, he's the sweetest little boy. So to watch that switch, that dysregulation and the flooding just turn into something that's not him, you can literally watch him change into something he doesn't want to be. And then when he comes down and he regulates, you can tell he's flooded with shame about it, about what he has done. Unfortunately, when he manifests that way, I get flooded too. And my wife gets flooded and hit with fear and definitely hit with shame. That's my primary emotion, especially when it comes to kids.
Yep.
Like, did I mess them up forever? That fires for me all the time. And so anyways, I'll try and make this story a little bit shorter, but we would take him to school and he would just lose his mind. Yeah. On the way to school, he would lose his mind, kick the chair, refuse to get out of the car. Yeah. I know, what do you do?
Right.
It's like, I'd throw him over my shoulder and make him go. And sometimes we would handle it well. Sometimes we'd just get out of the car. Yeah. Just get out of the car. And then we send him dysregulated back to school, this place that is unsafe for him. So it has its ups and downs. Some days are good, some days are bad. And I called Echo. I'm like, can you jump on? Love Echo. Can you just at least help me regulate because I don't know. I don't know what to do here anymore. Had a good talk with her. And then I'm asking Blake questions like, okay, so is this teacher mean? How's it going with your friends? Like everything's positive. And I'm like so confused. I'm like, okay, so when he goes to school and when he gets home, everything's fine. Like he's good. But when we are going to school, he loses his mind.
Yeah.
And I had this light bulb moment. I'm like, this trauma is trapped in his body. He gets triggered going to school, even though he knows it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so the last big time that happened, I took him to school. And this was like where it hit me. Holy smokes. And I'm parked in front of the school office. And as we pulled into, I can see the shift. It just switched. His body tensed up. He started to like shrink down and he was like starting to get angry. And I was like, so I tuned into him. Yeah. And of course, I'm flooded with shame because I'm literally sitting in front of the school office and my kid won't get out of the car to go to school, which means I'm a bad parent.
Yep. I hear that.
And I'm like, I can't force this kid. So we went for a little walk. We live in Sonoma County, so there's a vineyard right by his school. So we like walk and I'm asking him questions and he's talking to me and he's saying, yeah, sometimes school is lonely. And so we're processing, right? We get back to my truck. I'm like, okay, buddy. And he loses it again. And he literally just slides down my truck and is laying on the ground. This 10-year-old, he's almost 11. And I'm like, what the heck? So he finally gets up and I'm like, come on, buddy, we need to go to school. And I watched this little boy try to will himself to do what his dad wanted him to do.
Yeah.
But his body would not let him.
Yeah.
It literally would not. And I am flooded with shame, flooded with fear. And all I want to do is shake him and just deal with it and just go to school.
Yeah. And
I tuned into myself, processed, because again, I'm standing right in front of the school office with people looking at me. And I was like, and in that moment, I remembered I had some recall from my childhood having to do something that felt so unsafe.
Yeah.
And that feeling in my body. And I'm like, how can I do that to him?
Yeah.
How can I force him when what he needs is he needs someone to co-regulate with. He needs to get that out of his body. So fortunately, I tuned into myself and I was like, okay, buddy, I had sessions all day. I'm like, okay, you can come to work with me, but you're going to have to kind of be on your own and color and do whatever. But anyways, so that was like a really big moment where I could watch him want to be compliant, but his body not let him. So we just went down the road of like, okay, so this trauma is trapped in his body. We need to help him get it out. We need to help him learn how, because again, back to what we're talking about, this is an opportunity where I could either make him go and control him and take away the opportunity for him to learn how to process, learn what it feels like to be dysregulated, learn what it feels like to come back into his body, learn what it feels like to create safety for himself and others. Because let's be honest, if he gets into high school and then college and he gets dysregulated and it manifests as anger, there's serious consequences for that. That's not just like, oh, okay, you yelled, like it could turn bad. Yeah. And so we just had this opportunity to really help him. So what we ended up doing is we get up in the mornings now, him and we work out together in the garage. And what's so fascinating is if I try to wake him up at 7:00 to get ready for school, it's like hell. It's like pulling teeth. But if I wake him up at 6 to go work out with me and we process while we're doing it, he pops out of bed. So since then, we still had our moments. Like even here, I had some fear being here because he has a test today. And I had a lot of fear that he wouldn't get out of the car for Christina. But I called him this morning. We processed, we talked it out, talked it through. How's he doing? And he got out of the car just fine.
Wow.
Still had fear about the test, had all this stuff. But so I just really learned, one, when your kids experience trauma, it can get stuck in there.
Yeah.
And they need help. They need tools.
Yep.
If I don't tune into myself, I'm going to create more trauma. And during that time with the truck and stuff, we were in our coaching cohort, and which you should seriously do it. It's so amazing. We do the wheel every time with a group of people. And I was with one of our coaches and I did the wheel. And of course, it was about this situation because I was flooded. And so it was a really cool opportunity. And one of the graduated coaches emailed me later and she said something just so beautiful. She said, your son will probably never remember the hundreds of days where it was easy to go to school, but he'll remember that one day where his dad didn't add to the trauma and gave space for him to feel safe.
Yeah.
I think we often miss those opportunities because we're so flooded with our own shame
Yep.
and our own fear about how our kid's going to turn out, how we'll be perceived as parents.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's where we're at now.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
No, I think that is incredible because you're not the only one that experiences that.
Sure.
I mean, I've experienced that. I've shared with you last night and I've talked about it on the podcast with a 6-year-old.
Right.
And so we were taught, well, you just like spank them enough and then they'll do what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
But again, the trauma was trapped inside of their body.
Yep.
For me, this conversation is so incredibly important because we are living in a society where kids are not feeling safe going to school.
Totally.
There was a school shooting this week where multiple children and staff are now dead and injured. There was a loaded gun found on a Williamson County, the county I live in, school bus this week.
Wow.
We are living in a place where what our kids are experiencing, we didn't experience.
Totally.
Growing up.
Nope.
It is I was in 6th grade when Columbine happened. Wow. And I remember the fear in it, but that was such a rare, unheard of situation. Yep. Now it's so common that I think I saw 3 people post about the school shooting this week because we're just used to it. Yep. But our kids are not used to it.
Totally.
So whether it's going to school and experiencing bullying from classmates or a teacher that they don't feel safe with or trauma from fear of physically being unsafe in school, it is our job as parents to create that safety.
Absolutely.
For them.
Yeah.
And without tools to do it, holy moly, it feels impossible.
It totally does. Yeah. It goes against everything that I was taught societally as what is a parent. Like even we were talking about timeout for kids.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so your kid's misbehaving, probably because they're dysregulated or flooded.
Yep.
And what we do is we send them in their deepest need for co-regulation, we send them to be by themselves.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not shaming anyone who does timeout. We did timeout. I think it may be appropriate. I'm just saying there's a different way to look at parenting. Like for me, when my behavior's the worst, that's when I need connection the most.
Yeah.
And I think that's the shift in my mind. It's like their behavior is a result of something else that's going on.
Right.
And if I'm only ever trying to curb the behavior, it'll go away.
Yeah.
But they'll never share with me again.
Right.
They'll never let me see really what's happening for them.
Right.
And I missed it with Blake so much just because he would get big and I was taught to get bigger.
Yeah, totally.
You know, it's like, okay, you want to get big? I'll show
you.
And you're going to fall in line because that's what respectful, honorable kids do. They fall in line. And all I'm saying is it's not okay for you to be flooded.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm flooded all the time. I'm dysregulated all the time.
Yep.
So it's a lonely journey a little bit.
Totally.
Because there's not a ton of people in our world that are parenting this way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But we're starting to see results, which is I'm like,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank God.
And I think that is the key. And I do want parents that are listening to know that there is so much shame in being a parent.
Oh my gosh.
Because we carry everything. Yep. If our kid is a good kid, somehow that's on us. It's actually not. If our kid is a bad kid, it's on us. Yep. And also, I want listeners to hear, I talk about, like, I grade myself of what a good job I do because I'm an Enneagram 3 and an achiever. And I get like an A+ in like using these tools with West Wages. I am on point. We do such a good job. Yeah. But with my kids, I'm like a B-. You left our house last night and we lost it. Oh. Wes lost it. And then I mediated and it was a whole situation in our house last night. And I watched both of them get hit. Wow. Immediately. I could see her get flooded with pain and him get flooded with fear. But it happened at the same time. Oh. So now they're at war with each other and they don't know how to slow down.
Totally.
And I am raising a girl that gets big and I want her to get big.
Heck yeah.
But then it's hard when they're getting big against us. And so then there's a whole,
totally.
It's a whole thing. Yep. And so, but what we have found is that when we can slow down, so we had that moment initially, but then we diffused, we slowed down. Yep. And it was immediately like, what's happening for you, what's going on. And Wes could share his fear and he could share his lonely and she could share her sad and her anger. And then they could see each other again.
Yep.
And we could connect and have that kind of camaraderie and teamship in our home.
Yeah.
But it takes that like breath. And it is hard in the moment.
Yeah. So hard. With like our kids, I say this often, it's like, if you don't think that joy and pain can live in the same moment, have kids.
Yeah.
Highest level pain you can experience, highest level joy you can experience. That alone is just like so overwhelming. And let's be honest, they're very good at communicating through their emotions. They're not great at communicating what's actually happening for them, and we're having to teach them that. So it's easy to just get so knocked off course. It's so easy just because there's so much happening for us as parents, all regarding the kids.
1,000%. And so that's even what I reminded her last night before bed of like, girl, you are so much better at this than I was at your age. And it's not fair that our expectations, we expect our kids to act like adults all the time.
Absolutely.
Like we expect them to stay regulated and not have bad days. And our expectation for them is an unfair expectation.
Totally.
And so what I am taking away from everything that you're sharing, which thank you for sharing so vulnerably, is one, and it applies to both scenarios in any parenthood moment of respond over react.
Yes.
Slow yourself down to not be so reactive. And if you do react, you can always repair. So even last night, I reacted to Wes. I said, nope, we're not doing that. And then when I could slow myself down, I could come back and be like, actually, I was wrong. We can do it. And this is what was happening for me.
I love that. So powerful.
Yes. And we can do that with our kids.
I think if you do that with your kids, that's one of the most impactful things you can do your kids is say, I missed it.
I missed it.
I missed it with you.
Yeah.
You're showing humanity. You show them like, I'm human too. It's okay to make mistakes.
Yep.
But it also, you have to admit it
and
repair.
Absolutely.
So good. Yeah.
So try to frame your brain of like when you notice yourself reacting, because we know what that feels like.
Oh yeah.
I can feel that in my body. Yes.
My chest.
So when we can feel that, if we do react, to go back and repair. The second thing is that our kids are experiencing a lot of intensity all the time.
So much.
And we are also experiencing so much intensity that it's hard for us to make space for theirs.
Right.
Because like my problems feel so much bigger. I'm paying for like our car is literally breaking down. And I looked last, I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to buy another car? My problems feel big.
Yeah, right.
And so it's easy for us to dismiss their, you don't like your teacher?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guess what? I didn't like my teacher growing up either. Deal with it.
Yeah.
But to actually get on their level and to create that space to see what is their need. Okay, he needs to get up and have connection with his dad before he starts his day. And that changes everything for him.
Everything. Yep, it's a different world.
He needs to be heard when he's in those moments. Taking that walking, moving your body connects your brain.
Oh, so good.
And then when he or she, for anyone listening, can't get reconnected and doesn't feel safe, it is our job to create safety for them.
Yep.
That is our job as a parent.
That's our job.
The number one job.
Yep.
So those things are key in that. Slowing ourselves down and just seeing our kids. Oh, and the last thing is that our kids are dealing with high levels of anxiety. And if we think we have a mental health crisis today, we haven't seen anything yet. I've been saying this for a long time. And we want to train a generation that can come up and go through middle school and go through high school and not feel like their last resort, their worst resort is creating harm for other people or bullying other people and seeing people really well. But we can't do that without acknowledging the fear that they're living in right now.
Yeah. I mean, my encouragement to parents, in general, is get really, really curious about what's happening for your kids because there's so much happening for them.
Yeah.
Like you see behavior you don't like, find out what's happening because they're dealing with so much more than we know. And their problems are big to them.
Yes.
Because they're little and their big problems.
Yeah.
They may not know how to articulate that or put it into words. And so that's our job, is to help them get curious for them, because they're not necessarily curious about themselves, but we can.
Yeah.
We can find out what's happening for them. And it's a big deal.
Yeah. I actually saw a clip this week on Instagram from a Mel Robbins podcast, and I'm going to repost it. Hopefully. I'm so bad at social media. I've already done all of the work to save it and repost it, but it has an expert on there, and I don't know his name in this moment, but his whole thing is, if they can, they will. So in that moment with your son, he is not wanting to be defiant.
Right.
Last night, my daughter was not wanting to create discourse in our home.
Totally.
If they had the skill in that moment to do it, they would.
Absolutely.
But their brain is not connecting in a way where they had the skills to do that.
Absolutely.
And so when we see our kids doing something that we're like, this doesn't make sense, why are you not doing this? It's because in that moment, they are lacking the skill to do something. Yeah. There's something happening for them. Milo, my youngest, cried for about 45 minutes the other night because he was the only one that didn't have a present under the tree. And then we were going to a Christmas party, and we knew he was tired, so I just thought he was tired. Wes was making sausage balls. I gave him a sausage ball. He goes, this really helped. He was just hungry. He was just hungry. And so our kids have a need.
Yeah.
And we can either punish that need, which will teach them to not ever share, or we can figure out what the need is and meet them there.
Yep. I love that.
And so now, Elijah, will you do with me this core emotion wheel?
I will. Yes.
This is the tool that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis Hill, our founders, created that actually helps us to access what's happening in our bodies. So in those moments, we can slow ourselves down and know what we need and teach our kids how to access. And I say this all the time, if you're not using this with your kids,
seriously,
you are missing out on the greatest tool that the Connection Codes offers.
Yep, absolutely.
Doing it with Wes has changed everything for our marriage. Doing this with my kids has transformed our home. I know my kids, and they are not, we have our issues for sure, but we did the core emotion wheel with every single kid last night before bed.
Wow.
And hearing what's happening for them is the biggest gift that I can have as a mom. Yeah. So can we do it around parenthood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I can go.
Okay.
Parenthood. The one that fires first is shame. Shame and fear. Shame that I didn't have the tools before and created an unsafe environment. Yeah. Fear that I messed them up for good. Man. Ooh. Yeah. Lots of fear of creating trauma. Definitely guilt in how I used to, and sometimes still do, miss it with them and responded, especially to our youngest getting big. Just hate that. So lots of guilt and shame there. There's definitely lonely, and just sometimes I just don't know how to navigate this, and I don't know very many people that do, and it feels so wrong sometimes the way I'm doing it and the way we're doing it. Sad in that too. Sad that other parents don't have the tools. Yeah. Because I definitely watch other parents disregard their kids and get them to comply, but then I see the kids shut down. Yeah. I see them go okay, get that. Tons of hurt about this teacher that my son had last year. Tons of hurt, lots of anger about that. That one person could impact a life so greatly. Overall, man, the last few times I've done the wheel about parenting with joy hits, and I just get flooded with it because it's so amazing. Yeah. And my kids are, like you're saying at the beginning, they're all so unique and so beautiful. Yeah. And having these tools and really knowing what's happening for them is, it's what a gift. Yeah. What a gift. The connection with your kids. So I think I got them all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, I'm going to start with sad because I've been feeling sadness in my body very deeply this week around the school shooting that took place. And my sadness has a lot to do with the actual shooter. She was 15. Oh. She's a baby. It's a sadness that she didn't have tools, that she was broken, and that other people are suffering really deeply because of that. I just have tremendous sadness over that. I have guilt because my kids know what I do for a living. And so there's a higher level of expectation even. Totally. When I miss with them, it feels big because I should know,
Totally.
and so guilt for when I do miss with them because that doesn't align with who they know me to be.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's easy for me to get on here and sound like I'm
totally.
perfect. So I just always want to be clear, like I am not perfect. And so there's shame in that too. Wow. Shame that I have so many old patterns that feel impossible to break. I used to yell at my kids every single day. And now I yell at them like once every 2 weeks. And that's still awful to me. So just shame that these patterns, they feel embedded. And it's easy for me to see when I miss than when I'm succeeding.
Yeah.
Anger at society. Honestly, probably the pressure that they put on parents. We definitely have a role. We definitely have a responsibility. But parents are shamed endlessly. No matter what we do is wrong. And the shame creates a flood of emotion that causes us to then react to our kids. Fear. I don't think I already said fear. Fear that the damage that I have done with my kids is already, it's too late, that I've already we are all yellers in our house now. And it's because of the pattern that I had before. So fear that I've already missed too deeply with them. Lonely in motherhood. What a beast.
Wow.
Lonely in motherhood. Yeah. Hurt. I've had some sick kids this week. Last night, I was up twice with a kid that got a bloody nose in the middle of the night, and another kid ended up in my bed. And so just hurt that my body is carrying all of the things, and I still need to function as like a regular person and show up for them well.
That's a lot.
And joy. Oh man, so much joy. I have actually found joy in motherhood recently. I have said for a long time, I should have never been a mom. I do not have the personality for a mom. I think I'm starting to feel joy in it. Yeah. I really like my kids. I just don't like the role of motherhood.
Sure.
I think that my brain is starting to click of I'm experiencing joy in this season
so cool.
with them.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
And I know it's because of these tools and being able to see these little moments of connection with them. And I mean, when my 5-year-old's like, can we do the feelings? It's like, yes, baby, of course we can. I got this wheel out of his bedroom. He put it on he has a little thing beside his bed. He did last night. Well, Elijah, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story vulnerably. I know that there are so many parents that are listening and being like, oh my gosh, it's not just me.
Oh, seriously.
It's not just me that's having to shove my kid out the door to go to school in the mornings. And okay, there's something happening with my kid. They're not just a bad, defiant kid. So thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for showing up every week, for sharing these. I've had several conversations recently. They're like, I just found your podcast and I've shared it with everybody I know.
Yay.
Or my friend shared it with me and now I am just binging all the time. So thank you for letting us talk to you for the last bit. If you have not already left us a 5-star review, I know I say it all the time. It actually really does help us a lot. So please leave us a review and share with your friends. We are so glad that you are here. Oh, I should plug the parenting course too. We have a course on parenting that's pretty dynamite, that has transformed how we show up and in teaching our kids these tools and equipping not only them, but us in seeing them from a place of identity and seeing how to build these bridges with them so we don't raise an anxious generation.
It'll change your perspective on parenting.
It's 1,000%.
It's
yes.
amazing.
And so the link for that will be in the show notes. And as Dr. Glenn and Phyllis always say, are you going to do it with me?
Oh, no.
We have to do it.
Oh, my gosh.
It's their thing. We have to carry on the legacy.
I know.
You need this.
You deserve it.
Okay,
so let's do
this. Thank you, Elijah.